Safety Committee meeting being held virtually. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Ebling.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Move on to the agenda approval. If there aren't any changes, could we just approve by acclamation? Any objection to that?
Nope.
B, moving on to citizen comment. Kelly, is there anyone?
We don't have anybody in the gallery at this point.
Okay. Well, there'll be another opportunity later in the meeting. Move on to city administrator report. Bola, anything?
No, I have nothing.
And item 5 is report of committee chair and alderman. I do not have a report. Alderman Plufka, report?
No report.
Alderwoman Ebling, report?
No report.
Alderwoman Sims, any report?
No report.
All right. Well, then we'll get into the meat of things. We'll move into department reports, starting with the police department. I don't know if this is going to be chief or talk from the hawk.
Oh, good. I'm glad that's caught on. I do.
Everybody, Alderman Lockmiller. Alderman Lockmiller, if I could, I had a couple things to cover, and then Angie had something she wanted to present as well.
Go ahead, Chief.
The crime, generally speaking, especially in the last 3 to 4 weeks, has been down in Brentwood. We have had a couple incidents of car clottings that occurred about around October 7th and 8th. Short of that, the nighttime crime in particular has been down, so that's a good thing. We're doing an education process. As you probably all know, as the winter weather hits us, we often get cars stolen in the morning as warm-up steals. Our stolen autos have been down as well, but we want to try and keep it that way. So we're trying to do an education process to keep people from leaving their cars running in the morning to warm them up. So we often probably last year we got hit with some of those in the winter weather. So we're trying to educate some people on that. Talk a minute about traffic enforcement. We have a list. I can go through them briefly. We have a whole list of day watch in particular that the officers are hitting on the traffic enforcement part of our job. High school, 24 through 2600 blocks of high school. Rosalie, speeding on Litziger, stop sign violations on York and McKnight. The commercial vehicle issues that continue on McKnight. Stop sign violations at Pine and High School, speed on Pine, speed on York, speed and stop sign violations on Russell. And we also got another complaint today on Dorothy. Alderman Gould passed that through BOLA today, so we'll be adding that to the list as well. Particularly our day watch officers are assigned these locations, and then anything else we get, and they will go out and sit on those locations and write tickets as needed. So we continue to press on the traffic part. Our contract patrols, over 200 last week. Our officers have been diligent in riding the neighborhoods. They continue to do that well. We monitor that up, of course, with our GPS tracking, and require that they call out of service at all of our different neighborhoods. So they're doing a great job with that. Continue to do well with it. One of the things that's kind of on our radar, Alderman Plufka was talking about our prior president. The election that's coming up is of concern to law enforcement for a lot of reasons. Depending on who wins the election, obviously, we could have different responses in terms of the kind of turmoil that we may see. So we have adjusted our manpower as best we can here in Brentwood. We've also had 2 meetings with other departments in our area, and we continue to monitor nationally what everyone's expecting and anticipating as we look at the St. Louis area and how we can be affected by that in Brentwood. So as we get toward the presidential election here on November 3rd, we're paying a lot of attention to that in terms of response to any protests that may come up. Last thing I was going to mention before Angie can have her say, We currently have 2 officers that are out on sick leave and will be out on limited duty due to off-duty injuries. Sergeant Carmen broke her thumb and injured her wrist. And Sergeant Stanzi has a knee injury that's going to require surgery. Both are off-duty stuff. So, but we're going to be down 2 officers, 2 supervisors here for at least several weeks. So the good news is we are, knock on wood, we are COVID-free at this point in the police department. We continue to do the vigilant stuff that we've been doing for months now with sanitation of the cars in the station. So hopefully they'll stay that way. If anyone has any questions, generally the police department prior to Angie, anyone have anything?
Anything for the chief? I see nothing, chief. Thanks for the,
Angie?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Just to kind of piggyback on that small portion about traffic enforcement that the chief brought up, I did have our day watch supervisor move our our speed trailer down to Dorothy, right near Florence, where we received information that some citizens have been complaining of speeding and running a stop sign. And we have also added that location to our daily list of traffic enforcement activities within the residential areas. So that should be getting a lot more attention too. Luckily, we got some intelligence in the email from Alderman Gould that one of the people who is a common offender is likely a known person. So we'll probably be reaching out to them to making sure that they're going to engage in safe driving practices for our kids and our citizens. So that's been addressed, and I'm grateful that that was brought to our attention so quickly so that we can move to act on it. Also, we're trying something new, and we started in Brentwood Forest a couple weeks ago, and we began, myself and the Detective Bureau Sergeant and his 2 detectives went door to door in Brentwood Forest, and we knocked on every single door in the complex of Brentwood Forest condominiums, and we spoke with nearly 500 residents over there, and we basically asked them just a few questions, and we said, hey, just wanted to let you know that we're in your neighborhoods, we're doing patrols, want to make sure that you've been seeing our patrol vehicles, we want to make sure everybody's been locking their cars at night and hiding their valuables out of sight and that kind of stuff. And also we wanted people to give us their input on how they thought the police department was doing. If they had any questions or concerns, they had kind of an opportunity right then and there to ask us or address anything with us. And it was wildly successful. It was received very well by the residents. And quite frankly, it was received well by the detectives and myself. It was a very nice experience to see such a degree of support for the Brentwood police. And it was something that we're continuing now into the York Village neighborhood. They started this week there and have already spoken to about 70 residents. Very similar sentiment there. And obviously the goal for us is to basically connect with our citizens in a way that I think we've kind of gotten away from in this digital age and the age of social media and all that, and physically reach out to these folks and say, hey, I want you to be able to put a face to the name of Brentwood PD, and I want you to be able to ask us questions in person if you feel like you have any or any concerns. We're very blessed to have a small geographic area to cover. And it's my hope that in the next several months, we'll be able to reach out to every single resident within the city of Brentwood and make contact with our residents. And that's the benefit of being in a smaller place like this. And I'm very excited to extend that to the entire city and see if there are any concerns and questions for us and how we can best mitigate that. And I'm excited for our residents to see that we genuinely do care. This is proof of the fact that we care about our residents, we care about our community, and all we want to do is see it get better and more safe. And it's, like I said, it's been going very well. It's been very well received. And that's been one of the best things I think we could have done, quite frankly, especially amid COVID. We've run into a lot of people who have not left their homes for several months, and it's nice to be able to check on them. It's nice to be able for them to say that they've seen other human interaction. That's been good. So that's all I have for that. Any questions?
I see Pat, do you have a question?
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to thank them for doing it because everybody here was real enthusiastic.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's wonderful. That is wonderful.
David?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I've had a couple of residents stop me while I was walking my dog and said the same thing, that they were that they had a visit and that they were very pleased that the Brentwood Police Department was doing the visits and that they were very happy to be able to have that conversation. I did have one question, and maybe I can ask it offline. I don't want to. It has to do with the canine program, and I know that's put into a 501c3. I was just going to ask Major Hawkins if she could just tell us kind of where things are at in maybe 3 or 4 sentences at this point, if that's possible.
Absolutely. It's actually, the process slowed down quite a bit once COVID hit. 2 of the members of that organization resigned immediately, leaving 1 to do the heavy lifting. And that's slowed things down considerably. He's still in the process of finding other people to join him to sit on the board of the organization. And that's kind of where we stand.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Angie, I mentioned the talk with the Hawk. How is this being put out to the public?
Yes, sir. It's funny too. The Hawk was my nickname in elementary school through current day, and so I'm glad to see that it's followed me. And the chief was talking about putting together some version of a blog or some, how do we get some more information out to our residents on a more frequent basis? And I thought, well, in the interim, let's try and just put out a little newsletter every week and see, if we can reach any people that way through posting on social media and also on the website. That'll take you right to the newsletters, which Janet has set up as of today. I believe she sent me an email on that. So I'm hopeful that some people see it and are able to take away good things from it and can hear more from us on that front.
Some great communication. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else for Angie? Okay. Is anything else for the police department? Seeing none, and we'll move on to fire department. Chief Curtin?
Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. So we published the weekly report from last week and our monthly performance measures report. We've had those reports look pretty stable. We have had an incidence of more structure fires in the general area that we serve on the east end of St. Louis County, and so the department's been busy with that. And that's really the only thing that's busy in terms of a category on our reports. Everything else is pretty much status quo or else. So I'm going to move on to just my department update unless there's any questions about those reports.
I think we're good, Chief. Move on.
Okay, so first and foremost, we had a rough week. Well, we've had a rough couple of weeks with COVID. We have, as you all know, we have one employee who's been affected very seriously, but the good news is that started in August and here we are in October, and there was a period of time when I wasn't sure what we were going to be relaying in terms of his condition. It was not good. However, today I can inform you all that he's doing very, very well. He's doing outpatient therapy and working on those lungs, trying to get them back to where they need to be. So it's very cautiously optimistic at this point. He hasn't had any setbacks. It's been minor victories all along. So that's really positive. Last week we had an employee come down with the symptoms of COVID on his second day of his 2-day rotation. And was sent home and sent to St. Louis County for testing and unfortunately tested positive. We have a run date that he was exposed to a COVID positive patient Unfortunately, he didn't have any symptoms, didn't have any reason to believe that he was a threat, came into work on the first day, and we ended up sending the entire shift home Thursday morning after he tested positive. So out of abundance of caution, the county makes us wait 5 days after potential exposure, just for an incubation period on COVID. So we got the test results back on the earliest one over the weekend because he became symptomatic and they tested him earlier, and he was positive. So we had one test positive as a result of the initial person, just indirect contact within the fire station. So I was very worried on Saturday and Sunday about losing a whole crew. The good news is all the testing came back after Tuesday where they were all negative. So they're all back to work today. Assistant Chief Cottrell was part of that group that was exposed. So he's been out of the office all week up until today when he started a vacation. So I'm very positive about that. On the other hand, I'm very, very leery of all of this. We're doing everything we can. We're following all the rules, and we still got an exposure. So I guess the moral of that story is that best practices and they're not exacts. So we're doing okay. We got our B shift back today, so that was very good. We have exhausted our budget for overtime for the year. So I spoke with Paul and Karen about that end of last week when all this came up, and we have a plan on all of that. And so with the reimbursement from the county, that will help cover those costs. So I just wanted to let you all know on that. We also have one member out from an exposure that was non-duty related who has been unfortunately dealt a bad set of cards. Early on in the COVID stuff, he was traveling on vacation and went to a county in Colorado that was designated a COVID county or a hot county in Colorado. So by designation from the St. Louis County Health Department, was quarantined for 14 days along with one other guy. Well, he just got another off-duty exposure from somebody that showed up at a family event positive, and he had made it through. Everything was fine. He tested negative. I got those results on Saturday. I thought we beat this. And then his wife came down with COVID over, I guess, Sunday or Monday. So now we've lost him for quite some time again because it's got to run her 14 days and he's got to wait 5 days and so on. So, we've got several folks that have extended quite a bit of their personal sick leave over this, through no fault of their own. So I'm going to shift gears. I'm excited to let you all know. I put it in my weekly report last week. We've got 2 new employees, Jordan Seltzer and Catherine St. George. Both of them have been on board since the end of September and are working out great. Unfortunately, Jordan was part of that whole COVID scare last week, but all is well today. So they're doing really well. We're excited to have both of them. We have big things in mind. Shifting gears, the ADA project is coming to a close. At the end of last week, when the COVID scare hit, I sent them all home until we knew what was going on. But they are all back in the building working again this week. We got a negative test. So we're going to have our final walkthrough Monday next week. Put together a punch list so they can wrap that up. So we'll be bringing forward a closed project, I hope sometime early in November. It's gone very well with the exception of COVID delays. So otherwise, we're doing pretty well. Wanted to update you all on the ambulance. All of the paperwork was finalized and submitted. Payment was made. We received the heart monitor defibrillator a couple weeks ago. We received a new narcotic lockbox that was part of that. And the ambulance should be in Brentwood sometime spring of 21. I really don't have a better date than that as we learn more on that. We had a structure fire early part of October on the 2nd on Strassner. It was a commercial space. it's a tenant in that space that we've had problems with in the past. I would call it somewhat hoarding conditions within his warehouse. This has been an on again, off again issue with this tenant for several years. Unfortunately, everything we predicted to him came true on the 2nd, and he had a fire within the contents of that building. It caused quite a bit of damage to his neighboring tenants. What makes matters worse, he's a very arrogant individual and gave Cottrell a lot of trouble. I believe that the new building owner is in the process of working to try to terminate his lease and send him somewhere else, hopefully Brentwood. But the fire was extinguished through the sprinkler system in the building, which is outstanding. And then our guys did use one line to go in and mop up and do overhauls, do all the contents that were in that area. But mutual aid crews were there, and they all did a great job. Lastly, I just want to hit on our upcoming training. This week we have trench rescue training. It's a refresher program for our trench rescue techs that are part of the Brentwood, Clayton, and Maplewood shared training program. All of our trench rescue techs have a trench that was dug in Maplewood. It was originally going to be in Brentwood until the soil was so bad they had to do it somewhere else. So that's going on. We just wrapped up driver operations, which is basically emergency vehicle operations for our drivers. We have vehicle rescue coming up in November with a focus on practicing extricating victims from cars. We just completed sent three members of our Swiftwater group through Swiftwater boat operations training, and that was very successful. And then lastly, coming up in early November, we'll be sending several of our rescue techs to what's called Rescue Systems 3, which is a building collapse rescue training program that talks about teaches the folks on suspended breaching and forcible entry, reinforced concrete. They'll be practicing breaking that concrete and creating areas to get into a space, utilizing all the tools that they can use, like a scope they can drill a hole and put down and look for victims and listen for victims, and advanced shoring operations. So it's pretty extensive, and it's right in line with the training that we've hosted the last several years for the St. Louis County Special Operations Team, most recently down at the old Serco building, where we had the bus on the side of the building, and all those folks got to practice their skills down there. So it's a pretty busy place at the fire department right now, but that's what I wanted to share. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for the chief? Chief, I don't mean to point it out, but it looks like Catherine is a female hire for firefighters.
Catherine is a female hire. I'm proud to say she's Brentwood's first female firefighter paramedic. We were thrilled with her in the interview process. She did very well in the testing process, and she just hit a home run with all of us on the interview panel. And fortunately, she was still available when we offered her a job, and it's worked out very, very well.
Great.
Yep.
All right, anything else for the fire department? Move on to Public Works Department. Dan?
Okay. I guess you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the departmental report, there's basically three highlighted sections. So I tried to provide a brief update on those three different items. So we have the speed cushion. Most of you are aware there's part of a speed cushion that we assembled at Pine, just west of Hatton. We ordered additional panels since there was some confusion between the sales order and what got shipped. There should be 3 equivalent segments. So I tried to include a picture of what we laid out. There's 7 feet long by 6 feet wide, and they taper down on the edges, but the highest point is 3 inches. So whenever these are fully assembled, there'll be that slot between the middle and the outer segments, and that'll allow the fire crews to be able to drive through those slots. As I said, we didn't get all of the panels this time around, but they're making them. They'll ship them probably by the end of October, beginning of November. They'll be here, and then we'll mount those. It takes quite a bit of effort because there's a lot of bolt holes and sleeves that have to be pushed into the pavement to anchor that to keep it from moving. So what it does is it actually forces you to go, 25 miles per hour or less when you go up and over that 3-inch rise. Actually had, pretty decent positive feedback on these. I know I looked at Nextdoor, we had posted information, and then I've had a few people call about them, interested in trying to get those on their streets. But, this is a pilot program. Some of the locations that people had asked about, I had written down like 8611 Eulalie. That person thought they should have one on Eulalie. Have Dorothy / Litzinger, like basically near Mark Twain. I believe they wanted it more on the Dorothy side. And then Rosalie as well, that first block from Brentwood to Swim Club, basically. Since there's a hill there, I assume people would slow down, and there's parking on the south side, but they said that people are speeding there. We did put the data collector out there on Rosalie, and there are some speeders. I won't say that there aren't, but by and large, the percentage is pretty small, small single digits versus the overall number of people are doing what they should do. And then I tried to include information on there was a stop sign question about Strassner. So CVB is supposed to give me the history of it, but there was, and I remember this too, in the early 2000s, there was a 4-way stop where I indicated on that drawing, like just a little bit east of Memorial Park in the inline skating rink, at that Strassner and Hanley industrial intersection. Well, right now, cross traffic can move through Strassner, and then the folks going north and south on those side connections have to stop. And then there is a 4-way stop at Urban, and then of course you got the traffic lights at Brentwood and Strassner, and then heading east, you've got a 4-way stop at Strassner and Hanley Industrial, and then another series of stop signs closer to Hanley Station. So I don't know if there's necessarily a need to put a stop sign back there. When there was one, it was removed. If we would go back to it, there would have to be a justification, that there's multiple crashes, that there's sight distance issues, that the traffic volume is increased, things like that. If we can check those boxes, then it could be possible to add it. I just don't know that information yet, the history.
David, I know that you kind of wanted this on the agenda. Do you have anything to add?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So so this came from anecdotal complaints alone from people who are in that area, are trying to turn right, I guess, from Urban onto Strassner. They believe that the limited sight distance and the speed that people travel east to west on Strassner make it dangerous for them. They felt that they were in danger of being rear-ended or in danger of pulling out and causing some kind of a problem because of the speed with which cars come down Strassner at that location. They've also complained that it's in pretty close proximity to a crosswalk that we actually enhanced, taking people from the Y to Memorial Park. And so that was the whole reason for it. I mean, I appreciate you putting it on this, and I appreciate you asking for information. I realize we have the requirements that we adhere to with regard to signage and things like that, the standardized requirements. But I appreciate going through the process to see if this anecdotal evidence actually was borne out by statistics that either speed or frequency or volume of traffic has changed. The people that spoke to me insist that it is, but they're basing it on their own personal experience. So.
Dan, do you know how long ago it's been since? Let me back up. Did you say there used to be a sign there?
I know there was when I worked in Hanley Industrial, like next to Roto-Rooter. That would have been from like 2003 to 2006. There was a 4-way.
Okay. And Pat,
and it could have been even past that. I just know since I've been here since 2016, it's only been in 2 directions, north and south stops.
There was a 4-way before Strassner was punched through all the way to Hanley. So the city, I think, acquired property. I think even Public Works used to be somewhere in Hanley Industrial Court back in the day.
Right.
So with that change, the city hired CVB, did a traffic study, and the recommendation, because people often ignored it, was to remove it. And then another stop sign was put further down, closer to Hanley. So this is all secondhand information that I just shared with you. I just know that when I started about 9 years ago, this is because the same request came up from the alderman. Let's put another stop sign in there. And then I learned in talking to Lee Cannon what the history has been.
Pat?
Yeah, it was more of a three-way because there was no road coming from the south. It was Strassner and then the turn into Target. And that's kind of where the problem comes, is sometimes if there's a lot of cars parked on the south side in those parking spaces, parking lots there, you can't see if somebody's coming down Strassner to make the turn into Target or out. I mean, a lady came out of there and ran into me, and I was in the middle of the block going 25 miles an hour, but she didn't see me. So yeah, it's tricky certain times of the day. That's all.
I think, I would guess the traffic count's probably increased a lot since then too on Strassner. I mean, it seems to be a well-used cut through now. I don't know, do we want to pursue more data on that? David?
I was going to say, we could move the data collector there if you want. I don't know if, either police or fire have had to respond to a lot of incidents in the last, 3 to 5 years. Typically, you'll look at 5 years worth of data.
I mean, it seems to me that every time we engage CBB, I think generally speaking, it ends up costing us $7,000 or $8,000. I'd be curious. Again, this is my own personal opinion about this. I drive this area mostly to get to the backside of the promenade, to go in and out there. And then my wife also works out at a place that's farther down Strassner. So we're on that street, a fair amount. I don't pretend to know any more than anybody else. It feels like to me that there is a lot more traffic on Strassner. I think Alderman Lockmuller is correct that now that it's been punched through, as our city administrator pointed out, all the way to Hanley, it is a more used street than it was previously. And I don't know. I mean, what are the MUTC guidelines such that it would have to be a pretty dramatic change to warrant a stop there, Dan, or does it require the increase in traffic combined with something else before a stop sign is called for?
Yeah, the volume is one of the check boxes that you look at, one of the criterion. But then also, as you'd mentioned, it would be, number of accidents, if there's a sight distance issue. I don't know if I'd like to look at what Lee did and then also do an independent, report on our end. And then we can put the data collector out there too, just to see, what are the volumes that go through there. I have no idea. I know there's, some decent peaks, probably from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then weekends, people do shortcut. I take that to get back to the promenade. It's easier than sitting in traffic on Eagle Road.
Yeah. Sonny, did you have a question?
Chairman, yeah. So
I
yeah,
have a
with that in
comment
mind,
okay.
Go ahead, Sonny.
I'm sorry.
As the crow flies, I'm about 400 feet from where this is. And I mean, I think facts and data when we are fielding these anecdotal observations, because I probably drive that multiple times a day. And I can't say that I, particularly on, like, if we're talking just on Strassner, east-west, I've not seen any, I'm not noticed. What I've noticed is that people like expect that stop sign to be there and forget that it's not. And then, but so I don't necessarily know if we need a stop sign there. I will say live under a mile from my house, and I go through 9 stop signs to get to the CIBC building from Pine. And so I think that just as long as we're data driven about this, Alderwoman Ebeling, I will agree that when people come out of the total line by the Metro lighting and they're round in that corner before they're get to the cross section of Strassner and maybe it's Hanley Industrial, that people move through that quickly. But I would say, if offer my own anecdotal observation is that people will blow through the urban stop sign, and that is widely considered optional, because I've almost been hit several times because I rely on that stop sign to get out of my neighborhood. They're trying to get speed to make the light at Brentwood, thinking hopefully, that they can, have liftoff. So, but I just, I would need more than to be persuaded than just a couple neighbors calling. I just think.
So,
David.
So,
that's my 2 cents.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, with that in mind, I kind of agree with Alderwoman Sims. Short of engaging CBB, Dan mentioned a minute ago that maybe they could do some recordings that would give us data with regard to, I apologize on behalf of my dog, that give us data with regard to traffic volumes. Could we perhaps ask Public Works to do that, short of going to CBB with some sort of formal proposal? And if we speak to Dan about this in a month or so, and he says, look, I'm telling you right now that given what I see on the data and the lack of specific, accidents or other things that would trigger MUTC guidelines, that in all likelihood, engaging CBB would be a waste of money because it's not going to change anything. I'd be in favor of doing something like that to save us the consulting dollars.
No, I agree. One of Dan's hats is traffic engineer, and if he can collect some preliminary data and back to the next meeting too. Is everybody on board with at least looking at that preliminary data?
I would support that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, Dan, I think you have direction on that.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get a charged up unit and figure out where to place it. I'll try to put it near that intersection so that you'll see the free flowing speed. Basically people are going to be driving what they normally drive. I know some of you have seen the unit, it's pretty small. I'd say, I'm looking at it now, it's probably a little bit smaller than like a cylinder of Quaker Oats or something. It's smaller than that, but it's a box. I know Brendan looked for it on Rosalie and couldn't find it. It's that obscure, but it's supposed to be. I don't want people knowing that it's there. I want them to do what they normally would do. If they see the tubes, the pneumatic ones laying across the road, they typically start slowing down. They don't want to hit it with full force. This uses Doppler radar, so it's getting an accurate reading within a mile per hour. So it's pretty useful.
Dan, how many of those do we have? Just one?
We have 2 of them. Yeah, we
Where's
rotate them around.
I guess, is it possible to maybe deploy one on Dorothy also?
Yeah, I think we did that before. I'll look at the traffic cloud and see if it's on there. I know we did high school. We've done Annalee. We've moved them around, Pine, but
right.
It's no big deal to move. It's just a matter of a couple zip ties and mounting it to a pole or a tree.
Okay.
And then calibrating it. I just have to go into the software. It's not a big deal.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to do research on Strassner for traffic accidents? And if so, how many years back would you all think would be appropriate? 3, 4, 5 years? What would be good?
Well, I'd kind of leave that up to our traffic engineer to maybe work with you, Chief.
Yeah, usually 5 is what they look for. Like when we do the TAP, the STP grant type things, they ask for 5 years worth of data.
So we'll look back at 5 years, Dan, and I'll have Tom Bottini email you what we find, okay?
Okay,
Great.
that'd be perfect.
Thank you, Chief.
And then the
Dan?
last thing was, well, actually, I guess second to last, since there was an item that was added, but we looked at street lights. We're looking at street lights now. in preparation of the 2021 budget. So there is a dollar figure in there for 2021. We've spent our money for 2020. So I know some of the locations were given to us in Brentwood Forest. Some of those I think we can actually upgrade what's there to LED fixtures. So maybe it's not as expensive if we just upgrade the old technology from a metal halide to an LED. We can get more illumination. And, usually that's $100 fix versus putting in new lights, could be thousands of dollars. But I don't know if any of you have, besides Ward 4, if any of the other wards have any, preliminary needs or stuff you want us to investigate.
David?
Yeah, I just had a question. You're talking about streetlights, aren't you? I mean, you're
Right. Yeah, it could be solar. It could be AC powered. We've got a budget line. We bought both solar and AC power with this year's budget.
so
I
you
got
had talked,
products for solar next year.
and you had talked at one point about the potential for 2 solar lights in the triangles at York Hills. The areas where there used to be years ago, there were gas
yeah.
lamps there until they got torn out. Again, I apologize about our dogs. So I really apologize for that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
She just came home from training, and see how well she's trained?
Yeah.
David,
Worth every dollar.
David,
Yeah. Yeah.
last week my cat jumped on the computer when we were having a meeting.
Yeah. So you
I
feel my pain
appreciate
here.
that, yeah.
Yeah, so I apologize. So I was curious about whether or not the cost of installation. I know we've already acquired those 2 additional poles, but the budget for installing them, I think, is something that still has to be worked out. Or where are we at?
Oh,
on
no,
that?
the solar lights, Public Works can install them ourselves. It's just a matter if we would just buy the supplies. So supplies would be, like a sonotube, one of those big cardboard tubes. We would rent an auger, drill a hole, put the tube in there, put the reinforcing steel and bolts in the form, pour the concrete. All of that can be done in-house, and the materials aren't very expensive.
Okay.
Majority
Is
of
that
the
something
expense
that
was the light
can be-
itself.
Is that something that can be added to 2021? That specific cost, and we can debate that, obviously. But I would be in favor of. We've got the lights. They were locations that we originally talked about as being dark enough. The problem was trenching a line to that location under the street or through the street, or and it just became this sort of thing where it was like, this is really not a location that would lend itself to hardwiring a light to it. The cost became a kind of a prohibitive thing. But with the solar lights and the design that you located and and their output and all of that, I was just that's what I was asking about. Just was getting that in the budget for 2021.
Yeah, like I said, there's budget. I think it's 75,000. I'd have to look at it again, but I remember putting it together. So, the budget would support any of those options. I'm just curious, that island, who owns that? Is that owned by the trustees, or is that?
It is.
Oh, it is.
No, it's owned by the trustees. In fact, I made that specific inquiry at their annual meeting in July, and they confirmed for me both at the meeting and then later in an email that they own both those triangles.
Oh, that's good, because that makes it easier if you're just negotiating with one entity
Right.
that's in favor of it.
Right.
Yeah, and then the last item that I didn't have in the report, but we kind of talked about earlier today, was the radar-enabled speed limit signs. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Like the one you have on Pine, and there's one out on McKnight. You talking? Those?
Right. Yeah, Rosalie. Yeah, because I actually have the software queued up. I don't know if anyone's interested in seeing that, if I do a share screen, or you can see the one on McKnight like in live view. It's not like, it doesn't have a camera, but it's got a data recorder, and you can basically see what's occurring at any given minute of any given day, for northbound. It doesn't do southbound, it only does northbound. So when you go by the sign, I can tell whatever happened on the 21st of October, query, weeks ago. You can layer data on top of data. And basically I can see that the speeding occurs more typically on a weekend, Saturday or Sunday. There's less cars, so there's more, or actually there's less cars on the road, so it gives them the ability to go faster over the same distance. And then you'll see that there's a higher percentage of speeders during the wee hours during the weekday. So typically you're 4, 5, 6 a.m., but then by 7, 8 a.m., there's quite a few cars on the road, so they're forced to go slower. And then as there's less cars on the road, it peaks again. There's all kinds of neat little curves and stuff you can study.
Well, I think when I brought it up earlier today, Dan, it was more that we already knew we had an issue from using your data collector. And I'm just going to use school as an example. I know now we've got the trailer sitting out there, but I was just wondering if, I don't know how many of those we have as far as being able to redeploy them around town after different lengths of time. Like I've got one sitting on Anna Lee that I guess has been there, 2 years?
Yeah, it's probably been up there like close to a year now. Yeah.
I mean, how hard is it to then take it from there and move it to another street, put it on another speed limit sign, just to give another heads up to people to slow down is my thought of what they're for.
Yeah, because I thought what you could do is purchase a pair of them and then rotate them throughout the city where you see issues, and they make a universal bracket for them too. So you could leave the post and that mounting bracket on the post and then just release the unit. There's a lock mechanism. You put a key in it and it pops off. And since it's solar powered, I just need to put it somewhere where there's not a bunch of trees or something blocking the solar collector. But you're right. You could put it on Dorothy as long as there's not tree issues or whatever, but you could put it in that first block or Litzinger or whatever. You leave it there for a few weeks and you could actually, the police could remote into it too. I could give them access and they can look at the same thing I see and see when you would actually need to put an officer there because they're only speeding during, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. or whatever. Instead of just sitting there, waiting for somebody, you would actually be able to make a intelligent observation and a higher probability of when you're going to see someone offending the speed limit.
Is that in your budget for 2021 as far as a traffic calming
We
device?
have traffic calming devices for this year and next year. So again, I talked to TAPCO, the units like we purchased, they have those available. We could do a capital request and checked against the budget if you'd want to do it this year or beginning of next.
I would just be happy if we could somehow remove the one from Anna Lee, which is just a block long street, and get it on High School, which is a more traveled street.
We could, that one I would just need to call in utilities. You could move it over there. I could recalibrate it, go into the GIS, database and tell it that it's on High School, program the address, and then it's going to start reading for High School. Right. And then in the interim, if you wanted to, we could purchase one to move back to Anna Lee and the bracket. And then you could put that one back up, or you could say, you know what, I'm just going to leave it a post and I'm going to go put it over on Strassner because people are speeding near where there used to be a stop sign and see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I think people see these things and if they're there too long, they just get numb to them. But I think if they move around, you get more of attention to and put them in our problem areas. It's just my thought.
Yeah, because the next ones, I know that they make an option. It's a yellow border instead of white. And I thought, well, maybe I'd purchase the yellow since it stands out more so than a regular white background.
Whatever. I mean, if it's in the budget for next year, we can wait till then. But like I said, if I'm just requesting, if in my ward, if you could move that one from Anna Lee over to High School for now, since we don't, unless we got one laying around somewhere.
We don't have one laying around, but that's easy enough just to call in locates. It takes a couple days, and then we would drive a post in the ground and just release it from the one that's on Anna Lee and mount it over there. And I would leave the post if you wanted to put one back on Anna Lee. It would be easy to pop back on.
Well, it's sitting on It's
Because right
sitting
now
on-
there's a speed limit sign and then it's the sign above it that flashes. So I would just remove that sign and you still have value because the speed limit sign's still on there, the posted
Right.
speed.
Okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else for Dan? David?
Yeah, I just had a question. It has to do with trash. I had gotten 2 or 3 emails from people talking about whether or not our trash folks, do they pick through trash and reject some of the trash that they're being asked to pick up on Tuesdays?
Yeah, I'm looking at the calendar. What Tuesday, which ward? So that'd be
Well,
like
it would be Ward 1 for what I
Yeah.
am, but I mean, just whatever the trash day is, is it a practice that they're going to reject some things out of trash?
they will reject. Yeah, like say if you put a cinder block in there and then put a bunch of bags on top of it, when they tilt that contents back and they see that, they'll put the oops sticker on there and put it back against the curb because it should have been rejected. We've had people that were clever and they took their recycling tote and then they filled it with yard waste and put it out on a Wednesday because they didn't want to use the bags. So we reject those. But yeah, generally speaking, if it's in bags, they're not going to cut the bags open to see what's in it. But if there's something like hidden with the bags or they see like a 2x4 poking out, well, that's lumber and it's construction waste. It should be.
Do you have a list of, generally speaking, that you've already put together, either for the employees' benefit or just to have that lines out, what's acceptable, what's not, with regard to trash that's being, left out at the curb?
Yeah, we do. It's on that OOP sticker too, so I can always upload that
Is
in
it?
the weekly report. Yeah, because with the OOP sticker, it's got a detachable bottom to it, so the driver or helper can actually check one of the boxes of why it was rejected, write
Okay.
that number at the bottom, and then put the address, and then they hand those to us at the end of the day.
Okay.
So if someone calls,
And is it okay, and is the stuff that's being rejected, is it largely being rejected because where we're taking the trash won't take it?
That's correct. Yeah, because you have 2 different types of landfills. You've got one that accepts like regular refuse, which would be like food scraps and things like that. Then you've got your construction landfills, which would be brick and cinder blocks,
I
rock,
got it. Okay.
and then of course recycling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the only question I had. Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Anybody have anything else for Dan in the Public Works? All right, we'll move on. We have no old business, no new business, so we'll go to citizen comment. Kelly, anybody else jump in here?
Well, no, we don't really have anybody. Police chief has his hand up. I'm not sure if he wanted to, but
Chief?
he can speak. But no, there are nobody else.
No, I don't have anything, Kelly.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you. All right, then I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll move.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Night.
Have a good night.
Night.